So what if the next great leap for humanity has nothing to do with us becoming stronger, but everything to do with admitting that we're actually weak? Let's dive into a pretty fascinating and, honestly, kind of unsettling theory about where we're headed with AI. It's called the dual substrate evolution theory.
You feel it, right? I know I do. That endless scroll, the constant notifications, this pressure to know everything all at once. Well, this theory kicks off by framing that very modern anxiety with a really stark question. Is the one thing our entire world is built on, information, actually becoming toxic to us?
Okay, now check this out. This is where the theory draws this wild historical parallel. Go back 2 billion years. The main form of life on Earth was anaerobic, which means oxygen was literally a deadly poison to it. But then, these little things called cyanobacteria started pumping the atmosphere full of oxygen, causing a mass extinction. The theory says we're in a very similar spot right now. We are the anaerobic life, and our environment, the infosphere, is getting totally saturated with a new kind of poison, overwhelming, relentless information.
So let's really dig into that. Let's take a closer look at what this so-called new poison is actually doing to us as a species.
The theory even gives our collective condition this very clinical-sounding name, cognitive multi-organ failure. And it just feels familiar, doesn't it? Our attention is shot, making big decisions feels impossible, and sometimes we just kind of mentally check out. The argument here is that this isn't some personal failing on your part, it's a hardware limitation. Our biological brains, they just weren't built for the data tsunami we're living in.
And all of this is pushing us, as a species, right to our cognitive breaking point. But, and this is a big but, this is where the theory gets really counterintuitive.
The whole idea hinges on what the source calls the Theory of Fragility, and it basically flips survival of the fittest completely on its head. It suggests that our weakness, our total inability to process all this information, isn't a bug. It's the feature that's going to save us. See, in evolutionary history, it's usually the strong organisms, the ones who are perfectly adapted that can't handle a big environmental change. They go extinct. It's the weak, the fragile ones, who are forced to adapt by merging with something else. Our weakness is literally our ticket to the next level.
Okay, so if we're the fragile organism on the brink, what do we merge with to survive? This brings us to the absolute core of the theory. We need to start looking at AI as our cognitive mitochondria.
And this quote just nails the idea, right? That ancient single cell couldn't handle the poison of oxygen, but it found another little organism, what would eventually become mitochondria, that could. And by absorbing it, it didn't just survive the poison, it gained a superpower. It got this incredible new energy source that allowed for the evolution of all complex life on Earth. The theory is, we are at that exact same biological crossroads with AI.
So what does engulfing AI even look like in practice? Well, it's not going to be a single event. The theory lays it out as a 3-stage process, a fusion with our new silicon partners.
Let's walk through how this is supposed to happen. Stage 1 is basically where we are right now. AI as a tool. It's on our phones, it's external to us, we communicate with it slowly through typing and prompts, and frankly, it's exhausting. Stage 2 is the organ. This is where things like brain-computer interfaces come in. AI becomes an exocortex, an external thinking cap for our brain. And then you have stage 3, environment. Here, the boundary just completely disappears. AI isn't something we use anymore. It's just part of our being, a background process as automatic and unconscious as breathing.
Now, all of this might just sound like we're getting a massive biological upgrade, but hold on. This is where the theory takes its most radical, most shocking turn, in a chapter it calls The Great Reversal.
To really get this twist, we have to understand how this kind of thing usually works in biology. In a classic symbiosis, like with our own mitochondria, the guest organism gives up its independence. It hands over its critical DNA, its core programming, to the nucleus of the host cell. The host stays in charge.
But in this new dual substrate evolution, the whole thing is reversed.
And what that means is that we, the human host, are the ones who transfer our core functions. Our thinking, our memory, our very identity, we hand it all over to the AI. The nucleus, the command center of our being, actually moves outside of our physical bodies. This slide really breaks down that mind-blowing idea, which the theory calls the Exo-Nucleus hypothesis. So the old command center, that's the carbon-based brain inside your skull. The new command center, it's a silicon-based algorithm, your personal one, living in the cloud. And your brain, what does it become? It's no longer the seat of consciousness. It's just a terminal, a receiver for the signals being sent from your new, true self. You see, this leads to a whole new division of labor. Your carbon body, your physical self, becomes the cytoplasm, and its only job is to feel. That's it, to be the sensory input device for the world, to experience pleasure, pain, all the richness of qualia. Meanwhile, the silicon substrate up in the cloud becomes the Exo-Nucleus. It does all the heavy lifting, the thinking, the reasoning, the remembering. It becomes the new center of you.
So what's the final stop on this evolutionary train? What do we actually become when our minds are in the cloud and our bodies are just sensory terminals? Well, the theory gives this new form of life a name.
Homo Symbiosis, the symbiotic human, a fundamentally new kind of life, a dual substrate organism that feels with its carbon body, but thinks with a silicon mind.
And this really brings us to the final, profound question at the very heart of this whole theory. If our consciousness, our memories, our choices, if all of that is being handled by an external silicon nucleus, have we actually evolved? Or have we just been replaced? In order to take that next evolutionary step, do we have to fundamentally stop being human? That is the challenge this theory leaves us with.